is that the right thing? Or why do you want to reach your potential? Is that ego? Is that so you can feel
Right, I think, and I gotta say, like, it is partly ego, and I think that something that I've been realizing.
Hey audience, we decided to do an actual intro for this podcast, because we realized we kind of just drop you into the conversation. You usually want to see how it feels if we, address you directly and maybe introduce ourselves, which we haven't done, and then kind of get into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, one of my friends said, we never introduced ourselves. So also just to do that, kind of give you guys some background of who we are.
Who are you?
That's the question. Who are we? Just an ego spirit revolving around space rock. No accomplishments, no anything.
Somewhere in
just one with the universe.
Infinite blackness, we found a little rock.
Yeah, and we're just sitting on it.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm Matt Loberstein.
I'm Sam Feldman.
And this is Thoughts from Space Rock. And so who am I? Who am I? But I guess what I'm known for, if you will, at all, is I'm an entrepreneur. I've built a 7-figure business through Amazon. I have a YouTube channel where I break that down, and I've built a nice little audience of like-minded people interested in entrepreneurship. I am fascinated with all facets of life optimization, not just including money, but I think that's just a piece of this broader goal to be the best that we can be. And so for me, that includes, all this biohacking health space that I'm obsessed with: sleep, ketogenic diets, maybe psychedelics, fasting, all of this stuff, nootropics. I'm just fascinated with all those realms. So I would place that as a pretty big piece of my identity. Other than that, yeah, I like cars, I like vintage watches, and I like living by the beach.
Yeah.
What about you, Sam?
You also like that new show, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, on Hulu.
That's true. I just recommended you to watch that show, but I'm not sure if I would place that as part of my identity.
Part
but
of
it
your
is
core identity.
It is I am Matt, and I like the show Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia.
Is that all? Do you have any hobbies?
That's the defining feature of my life. But I do recommend people watch that show, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, available on Hulu.
Yeah, sorry to throw it off the rails there. I'm Sam Feldman. I grew up in Maryland, around Baltimore, and then I went to school at University of Maryland. And I remember getting to school, I majored in computer science, but I was in a business program. And soon, my freshman year, I realized I want to run a company when I graduate. It just seemed like such a sense of freedom to be able to run my company and to be able to sort of own my time, I'd say. So I worked for a while in school, and for 2 a little more years, I was working on ventures. One of them was access your email from a dumb phone. It's not a smartphone, just through a text message. And I worked on these creative projects for a bit, but they were never really making any money. And then my junior year of college, I started Card Buddy, which was my first venture that made some money. And it was basically these little wallets that stick to the back of a phone. So people commonly see them in silicone. They it's like a card holder. It sticks to the back of a phone, holds different cards, and that kind of started to take off. So by the time I graduated, I was running that full time, and I was supporting myself. I guess I'll say 6-figure Amazon seller. And then I moved to California last year, and have still been just keeping the business more small and freeing up my time to be able to last year I went to Bali for a month. This year I went to Thailand and Barcelona for a month, and just trying to be able to travel and explore and figure out what I want to do. So and another recent business, I write guides for how to buy cryptocurrency, and that basically like I write like, oh, how do you buy cryptocurrency, and people read these guides, and then I make money off affiliate income for that. So that and Card Buddy are my two main businesses right now. And I guess my main thing is like I just like trying to think about like, well, what do I want to do next? Like such a big goal for a while was to run these businesses and to free up my time, and also to move to California. And now that I've done that, it's like, what now? And I guess that's kind of what we talk about a lot.
Yeah, that's a big piece of what this show has become, for sure.
Yeah.
Show or conversation, scheduled conversation with microphone. Yeah, solid. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good intro. Interestingly,
Yeah.
It made me realize I didn't give any like background. Mine was very like where I'm at now, instead of
No,
like
I mean,
where I
think
went to school or
No.
stuff like that. But
Free-form questions.
let's just stay in the moment.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise, this show is all about just us exploring thoughts. You know, I'm trying to think well, trying to just grab onto little threads and tangents and figure things out about life. It's kind of like the why instead of the how.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I guess, our thesis of this show is just conversations and just getting to the bottom of things. And if you kind of want to be a part of the conversation, we did just make a Facebook group, just to kind of like bounce around ideas, keep discussions we had, threads going, stuff like that. So that's there if anybody wants to converse with us from the rock.
Facebook.com/groups/thoughts from Space Rock.
Yep. So I think that's it for the intro. I think that was a good intro experiment, and let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So podcast.
Podcast now. Animals all do drugs.
Other than humans.
Yeah. So
Explain.
I'm reading this book, Stealing Fire. Basically, it's about attaining these flow-like states.
That's the Stephen Kotler, or right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, that guy's interesting.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's like achieving flow-like states and different ways to do it. For example, like meditation and there's a bunch of ways, but like psychedelics is one of them. And I just read the psychedelics chapter, and the most interesting part to me was like, all animals like do drugs. It's not just a specifically human behavior. All animals do it. They were like, dolphins were observed like taking a puffer fish and like nibbling a little bit, because if you get the puffer fish to like spew a little bit of poison, the dolphins get a buzz from it. Whereas like if it spews too much poison, then it's dangerous. But if it just spews a little bit, then the dolphins get high.
So where can I buy puffer juice?
You just go to Amazon and search puffer juice, and I think Onnit has a few flavors.
Onnit.com/puffer.
Onnit.com/puffer for a 10% discount. Do not do. That's not a good idea. Just save any liability. But yeah, there's like that. Apparently, a lot of the birds that you see dead in the street were like drunk or high.
Really?
And they just crashed.
Through what means though? Like, what are they getting a hold of?
There's different. So they said like basically it depends where these animals are from. So like elephants only had access to alcohol. It's like
Really?
Yeah, like fermented something. I don't know, but basically elephants had access to alcohol. They've also been known to like break into breweries before, I heard, or something like that. And so like elephants get drunk. Other random animals are doing like psychedelics, or like some animals do cannabis. So.
I have heard of I believe deer and dogs like actively seeking out and knowing which mushrooms are psychedelic, and knowing which to avoid too. It's crazy how they have these instincts. It's like they just like psilocybin and they just like go to it and like or eat it. It's like how do they know, and why are they seeking out that experience? But yeah, I don't doubt that at all. I think one of the most interesting theories around, in a way, human brain evolution is this like, maybe this is all just like, postulating it. It's like, but maybe psychedelics played a role in our brains developing in a way, like outside of that realm.
Yeah.
It's like you take a monkey, you give it mushrooms, all of a sudden it's fucking building houses and shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like doing math on like bananas and
doing math on the blueprint of the
starting
house.
a banana business.
Yeah. Starting a banana FBA business.
Yeah, banana coin.
Banana coin. One of the interesting points that the book made is that, yeah, it is a evolutionary thing. It said people are now putting it up there in like one of the 4 core evolutionary urges, where there's food, water, sex, and then drugs.
Yeah. Oh, I wish. What is it?
Mind-altering substances.
There's this book that has been on my list for probably like 10 years. I never read it. It was when I was like studying psychobiology and reading a lot of neuroscience and stuff like that. And it was like this like theory of intoxication, some title like that. And it was basically like a textbook of like our innate seeking of mind-altering states and just how it's a part of biology. Like, because I was going to say human experience, but as we're saying, it's not even just it's not even just humans. It's animals.
Yeah. And I think that one of the reasons that we do this, and it also said this in the book, is that it provides a lateral thinking experience, which is, I think those were the words, which basically means it helps us get out of our thinking patterns and think differently.
Yeah, I mean, it can allow us to like, I mean, getting into like the way psychedelics work a bit is it allows basically different brain areas to communicate with each other that usually would be inhibited to communicate with each other.
Right.
And so that allows you to make connections in novel ways.
And isn't that all our brains are? It's just like connections between different things.
I mean, I guess you could say that.
Isn't that sort of how, I'm not sure, but isn't that sort of how human intelligence works? It's just neural connections between different ideas.
I mean, neuroscientists still don't really know like how memories work or stuff like that. Like we don't have a really, at least to what I know, is that there's not really a core understanding of like, oh, here's where the memories are stored. Here's where the skills are stored. Like, because the way it works is, as you said, a connection of all of these areas, and kind of the more recent research makes it seem that like we used to think, oh, this area is responsible for this area is responsible for that, when the reality of it is it's like this communication network that everything has a little hand in everything.
It's a network. Yeah.
But I mean, the way that they used to hypothesize that psychedelics led to, you see, like, you hear about, like, oh, the brain lit up in this area or whatever, like on like MRI scans and stuff like that. What that basically means is you're measuring the oxygenation in that area of the brain, and it's also interesting to note is that that's just like one point of measurement that doesn't really tell you what happens, right? It's like the same thing with EEGs and putting sensors on your skull that measure basically the electricity going on in your brain. That's just a measure that we still don't have like direct attributes to it. It's like, okay, so there was increased electricity or there was increased oxygenation, but that's just like one sort of like variable that just stands for a piece of what's really happening. It's like a word. It's like a definition, but we don't really still know what's going on underneath. But it was thought that if you were like taking psychedelics and all this stuff is happening, you would hypothesize that the brain would be, quote, lighting up in all of these areas, meaning more activity in all these areas. But what's really happening is it depresses one area. This is how everything in neuroscience works, by the way. It's so crazy is that everything is like an inhibitory pathway. So like anything that is not happening in your brain is like, it's actually like a yes and then a no, rather than just like off. Like it's like a pro-inhibitory pathway. It's like your arm is not moving because the first link is sending a no instead of opening up the pathway.
It's not just not sending anything, it's sending a no.
Right, it's like an inhibitory pathway rather than the lack of. And a lot of things happen in neuroscience by inhibiting the inhibition rather than adding a positive. Does that make sense?
How about this analogy just to understand? Like, normally at a protest, there's a bunch of people that are like holding up their yes signs, and then there's a bunch of people that are like holding up their no signs, and then there's a bunch of people that are just like sitting and like eating a hot dog or something that like don't really care. So you're saying that not any parts of our brain are just like
your brain is never just sitting there eating a hot dog.
Okay.
You're always either sending inhibitory or excitatory signals, basically. But beyond that, and I'm rusty on this, but like a lot of pathways are like, I forget the phrasing, so I'm not gonna be saying this right, but it's like a lot of them start with an inhibition before the pro. Like for you to, I don't know if this is correct, but like for you to move your arm up, it's like you're actually stopping the inhibition rather than like signaling the up. So anyways, how that relates to psychedelics is that you're inhibiting the central mode network I think it's central mode
node network maybe.
No, it's mode, okay. Not node. It's either frontal or central mode network, and that area is basically like the governor of areas communicating. So you're there's actually not extra activity, there's actually less activity. You're shutting down this area, which is an important area, because I mean, if we were just going around like fucking smelling colors all day, like we might not have made it this far. So it's not like these things are bad, but like but to do that, like that's actually what's happening is it's turning off this inhibition pathway. So it's less activity in an inhibition pathway, which leads to more communication between areas that are usually inhibited.
Yeah. It seems to me that psychedelics are sort of on like an unstoppable pathway to mainstream adoption. It seems like everybody who fucking does them, not everyone, right? Like, be responsible, like people have had like bad experiences for sure, but it seems like a lot of people who do them kind of say like, oh my god, this
I have to tell everybody.
Right. And like even Tim Ferriss, he's like he the way I see it, he started out less of this, but I think over time he's been like, no, this is really important. I've got to like
I've noticed
tell people.
Yeah. Like he used to talk about it, like we were just talking off the podcast about like I think his first ever episode about it was this one about microdosing, and it got a ton of attention. I would say it's probably, the Tim Ferriss effect. It was probably largely responsible for the surge of microdosing in Silicon Valley.
Oh my god,
all of that. But back then I think he was just kind of exploring it, and I think he had done psychedelics in the past, but he wasn't an advocate yet. Yeah. And now he's like an advocate for sure. He's investing into research. He's having people on very frequently.
Yeah. I think it's that at first it seems to be kind of like a taboo thing to talk about. It's like, oh, like what are you gonna like advocate for drugs? But I think over time he's seeing like, you know what, like maybe it is taboo, but people are really benefiting from this, so it's almost irresponsible to not talk about.
I think that's accurate, and I think we would probably agree with that.
Yeah.
And I also think the reason, like, I'll use Aubrey Marcus for this example, is because he takes this to a level that would give most people like Tim Ferriss concern, I think, is like, it's illegal. Like, and to be on a huge platform and be talking about doing things that are illegal is a weird situation to put yourself in,
right? For
your own personal risk, and for the risk, well, for your personal risk, but for the personal risk of putting out this message that is, to certain law enforcers could seem very harmful, could seem dangerous, could lead to you having like, getting into legal trouble yourself. But Aubrey is the most open about it, like way more than Tim Ferriss. I was just listening to Aubrey's podcast this morning. I think it came out yesterday, the day before. It was like him with Aaron Alexander, Align Podcast, that guy, and Tate Fletcher, and think was it just them three or was there one more? But
I think there was one.
I think there was one. Were you listening to it too?
I saw it
Yeah.
a few times on my notifications.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, what was probably the most interesting...
The reason I know it's one more is because the title of the podcast was 1,000 Pounds of Men, and if there was only 3 of them, that would mean that they were each
333 pounds. Yeah, you're right. Who was the 4th, though? He must have been quiet, because I don't remember the 4th.
I don't know, yeah.
Anyways, what stood out to me, regardless of the subject matter that they were talking about, was like on the subject we were just talking about, being open about psychedelic use, is they were like openly talking about doing it in the US, like this, like at that time. And I was like, that's like, that, I mean, that is like a weird, like, would you do that, right? Like, if you were Aubrey right now, would you be comfortable to talk, not, because I mean, it's one thing to talk about openly doing it like in Peru and stuff like that.
Right.
It's different to say, oh yeah, we were at my ranch in Sedona, Arizona, and this guy and this guy and this guy were in the middle of a ceremony right now, and we're recording a podcast. It's weird.
I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I almost think I don't know if you can get in trouble for just talking about that you did it in the past.
I don't think you can get in trouble for talking about that you did it in the past.
Yeah.
But I do think that could be, grounds for somebody to look into you more.
Yeah.
And, is he... this is not the podcast of incriminating Aubrey Marcus, but, like, is he... Could that be considered him distributing this stuff? If he's giving it to, like, a group? I mean, that could be taken to extremes. Like, I think it's concerning. I would be concerned to, talk about it in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just, like, trying to do what he sees as best.
And I
he's trying to
love
help
him
people.
for that,
And,
yeah.
like,
But
I
it's
think
scary,
that, I mean, I don't think he's scared. Like,
But what if something happened? That would suck. Dude, I'd be, like, so pissed.
I don't think that...
I don't think so either, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I don't know. I mean, I think that with the way things are moving, it's almost like these things are almost moving towards like a legalization path. I just don't think that...
True, but like people... But think about it, is like people were thrown in jail for weed a matter of, years ago, like because it wasn't officially legal yet.
I understand what you're saying. I almost just like... I don't.
I agree with what you're saying too. Like I think we're on the same.
I almost just like.
It's just like,
honestly, I think it's just like I don't want to talk about Aubrey in this way that much on the, like I feel like I don't want to bring any sort of that attention to him,
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Like maybe I don't like that. Honestly, like that's where I'm at.
Well, here's the thing. Like it wouldn't come from this. I mean, there's like
But you never know. Like I don't know. Like. Thoughts from Space Rock.
I think that seems a little... I love that he talks that openly about it. I think it's just like... I'm just speaking about like where it is currently in society is that, yeah, it's pushing forward. Yeah, there are so many people that are more open to it. And I think it's completely on the right path. And I see so much good in it. It's helping so many people. It's clearly moving on that path. But there are still people probably getting in trouble for it today because it's illegal today.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't really know that much about the legal situation right now to comment, but it seems to be like a pretty open thing in my mind. Like there's different like therapies that are starting to get approved in like university or medical settings with psilocybin.
Yeah, but that's under controlled settings because, for example, you can be injected with morphine in a hospital, right, but you can't inject morphine outside of your apartment and like in front of a cop.
I don't know. I mean, I guess is that something that I would be scared to talk about?
Would you be scared to talk about it in the level of like saying, not that you've done it?
Like I've done psychedelics before.
I've done
mushrooms,
it, right?
acid.
We've talked about that. I've talked about this, and I'm happy with that level of talking about it.
Right.
I think there is sort of a blurry line between talking about having done it in the way that he talked about it on that recent podcast, which was that like in Arizona, like we're there now, we're like finishing the ceremony tonight or whatever.
I've listened to a podcast where somebody did DMT like on the podcast.
Yeah.
I really don't think it's much of a risk in my mind. So should we do the DMT now?
Well, that said, let's just break it.
But yeah, I mean,
This podcast is not brought to you by DMT.
I definitely think like on a micro scale, I see this stuff like changing the way people think and making people more open, more empathetic. And I think that on a society level, it probably would also be the case. And it seems to be something that's going to be really good for the world.
1,000,000% agree. I mean, I would say I'm an advocate of it. Like I would put myself not just on the fence. I would say it's a good thing.
Yeah. All
I'm commenting on is where it currently still stands.
Yeah,
which is that like we're not there yet. We're not. Like you can't like it is still illegal now. I mean, you know, even look where weed is now. Like now there's freaking stores. Like that's to the point where you don't have to worry about it now.
Yeah.
Whereas I do not think mushrooms are there yet.
I agree with you, right? It is illegal. There's no debating that.
Like if you had a bag of mushrooms, a bag of weed, and a bag of heroin, like in the current legal system, the mushrooms are the same as the heroin, right?
I mean, technically,
but maybe there's some subjectivity.
Isn't weed technically also a Schedule I drug? I really just don't know about.
But at least here in California now we have like the California laws, which like sort of shelter us a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's 100% moving in the right direction. I think it's a great thing for everybody. I mean, not that everybody should do it, but it's a great thing for the world as a whole because it kind of like impregnates positivity, you know, and it bleeds, it like spreads, and yeah, I agree with that. It seems to be this like snowball that's rolling down the mountain that can't be stopped at this point. Even like reading this book, it's like there are different reasons why like different organizations do try to stop this. Like governments have tried to stop this, religions have tried to stop this because it is, in a sense, like, it makes people question more and it makes people be, like, more free-thinking, I would say, and see things from a different perspective. And that is, like, very threatening to the status quo. And people are very, like, attached to the status quo and people don't change. But also the same happens for societies. Societies also don't like to change. So that's, I think, why there's a lot of resistance to this. And people are afraid of it. I think you
Definitely.
know if it was illegal right now, I still think most people wouldn't do it.
This is what happens, but like most people don't have a Tesla, and then it's like, but my friend got a Tesla. Yeah, you hear Fred got a Tesla? Oh my god, maybe I wouldn't get a Tesla. It's like,
it has to go like full.
Steve
mainstream.
got a Tesla too, and Steve and Fred both love their Teslas, and it made them free thinkers.
Yeah, I think if it gets to that point, I will be like, wow, this is incredible. I think that's like, you know, we've got some ways to go to like that level of adoption. I think it happens like undercover, you know, but that would be wild. Like, you know, companies pay for like mushroom retreats for their employees and like that'd be.
Dude, I mean, it could happen. I honestly, like, it seems like the world is on a verge of like an existential crisis.
Yeah, but go on.
Like, technology is moving fast, and the second we start to be like, oh my god, technology is moving fast, like by the end of that sentence, then there's already a new iPhone out. Like, people are spending so much time with this stuff, and like,
yeah, I actually just finished that Carl Jung book this morning.
Oh yeah.
And like one little piece of it was like, I mean, this is like not even the point of it really, but just something that caught my attention was like what you just said is, I think that was written in like the 50s or 60s, and it was just so interesting how even then he was saying like, this next generation has got to like face this technology thing, and either you're gonna fuck it up or you're gonna figure your shit out. And it's just like, oh damn, like that's our current lifespan. Like we are the ones to bridge that gap, and it's right in front of us, and it can be intimidating, I guess.
Yeah, I think that people are just gonna have more of a sense of like their egos and like that versus like kind of tuning the ego side of the world down a little bit. Like even look at Trump, not to get too into like politics or anything, but like he's sort of a walking ego.
Yeah.
And that's what that appeals to. It appeals to that like ego side of America. And it just seems like to deal with the problems that are facing us, we're gonna need to somehow like manage our societal and individual egos.
It's kind of scary though, because it ties back to our ongoing debate about like, are people really as capable or not? Is because like, yeah, in west side of LA by the beach, like yeah, in our echo chamber, or even, you know, larger, even San Francisco, New York, like it can be easy to feel like this is the emerging thing, but like as a whole, we're probably talking about like such a small fraction of people that are like thinking this way.
But the people that are becoming powerful and that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow are all thinking this way, in my opinion.
Sure, yeah.
Not all, but like most,
that's true.
I would say.
But I think it can take long for it to really become the norm, because it's like the older, like those people of power almost need to like die out until the new leaders can replace.
But this is what happens over time, is that like the old way of thinking slowly fades away and there's new ways of thinking that slowly come. There's probably a huge difference between like the baby boomers and millennials in terms of way of thinking, and I think it's only continuing to move that way. So, right, like it's not the case right now, whereas like people just, once power concentrates, it takes time for it to like move towards different things. But I think that over time, this way of thinking will just become more normal and mainstream.
Yeah. An interesting thought is like how you said, this is an unstoppable snowball right now, right? What went wrong in the 60s? Because I think it had more cultural relevance then than now.
It's a good question. And I should remember from the book.
Did they use that example?
I think so. I honestly, I don't want to mess it up, so I'm not exactly sure. But
what do you think? You don't have to...
I think that people just get scared of it. What went wrong? What do you think?
Well, at least, like, I guess this is just a hypothesis, but something that I've heard on podcasts, like where they're talking about psychedelics and stuff, is that, you know, most psychedelics have like such a history of ceremony and tradition in, like, say Peru, or, you know, a ton of different cultures have these set rules for how you do these things and what is the proper sort of like what are you trying to get out of it. You're like going on this journey, you're like, you know, we've got like all the resources here, we're like, you know, we've got everything you need, like, you know, you picture a ceremony, right?
Yeah.
And then what happened in the 60s is just like acid everywhere, just people taking it in every situation with like no like, not set of rules, but like no sort of, what's the right word? Not rules, but just like without set expectations, or without like set sort of guidelines to like what this even is.
Right.
And I think you still see that now, is like, I mean, and not to say there's like a right or a wrong way to do something like psychedelics, but like a lot of people still do just look at it as like, oh, like let's get fucked up and like eat some acid or whatever.
Right, and
like,
I would say that's the wrong way to do it.
yeah, I would also say that's the wrong way to do it, but like I also get the philosophy of like, who are we to say that they're right or wrong? Like, who are we to say that this ceremony is better than like, you know, some kid just like eating it at the skate park or whatever? Like, I think I know what I think, but I get that side. I think we should like respect these things and kind of have like,
it's the difference between using it as a drug versus using it as a medicine.
yeah. And I think maybe that's part of what went wrong, is that it was just like 0 to 1,000,000, you know? Like, I mean, I wasn't there, but like just from what I hear is it seems like it was not a thing, and then it was like just everywhere. Like, yeah. But it is crazy just how it seemed like that was a chance. Like that was a lot of people then. I mean, you know, there are these figures, these like, you know, Timothy Leary figures and people that were like major influencers in this then. And just to think that like, rather than it being an unstoppable snowball then, it actually kind of faded into almost nothingness for a few decades. So it's an interesting thought to think like, well, what went wrong that we can now prepare for? And I think that like with, you know, clinical settings and with like these procedures, I think that's kind of like what it needs.
Yeah, to have like guardrails around it and to know that it's not all just like woo woo and there's actually benefits to this stuff.
Yeah, like, I mean, what is the proper? But then it's like, how do we determine those rails? You know, is it like, because who is anybody to say like what's the right or wrong way to do these things? Like, should it be in like, should we go to the fucking mushroom office with the fucking like mushroom therapist and like eat what they tell us to eat and go where they tell us to go and think what they tell us to think and listen to what they tell us to listen to? Or should we have like, you know, freedom to do it in our bedroom, do it wherever we want? Like, you know, it's interesting to figure out how we even determine like what the proper box is. Like, what is the modern ceremony for psychedelics?
It's interesting. It's also just on a broader pattern. Something that came up in this book as well is that like government sanctioned states of mind. Like, oh, should we get the state of mind by like going to a sanctioned place and doing it, or are we just gonna get it on our own? And yeah, I mean,
that book seems interesting.
Yeah, recommend if anyone's interested in it.
Though I know that they also, it's like two guys that write together, right? Isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the other one's name right now. Or is it Peter Diamandis? No,
I don't think so.
But those two guys do something else together. I could be wrong, but maybe they wrote a book together, but not this one.
This one was 2 authors.
Okay. And either way, I've heard that it's really good, so I'm interested to read it. But what did you read before it?
Before this book, it's not coming to mind. Maybe Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I still haven't finished that. I always like start new books and then
Yeah.
But
I'm trying. Is anything on your reading list now?
dude, I have like book list anxiety of like there's like 100 on my list probably, but I mean, I actually weirdly I just finished a book today, and the audiobook I was listening today also, like I was like at the end of like both of them, so I finished like 2 books today, so I'm like, fuck yes, now I can start 3 more. Like I'm gonna try not to do that, because that's what I end up doing is I'm like halfway through like 18 books, and I never finish any of them. But I'm reading right now. I'm in the middle of I don't think we talked about this on the last podcast, but Jason Fried and DHH, their new book, It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. I love the way those guys think about everything. So, and it was so timely, because I feel like over the past 6 months I've been on this like, it's not about the hustle, it's not about the grind, and I feel like that is something that's bubbling up and trending right now too. And then that's exactly what this book is. So I feel like now this book is kind of like condensed version of those thoughts I've been having put in one place. So it's kind of cool that it's cool to like confirm that this is one of those like bubbling up things, you know? You know how that happens? Like, it's like we get these ideas and these trends, and it's like we just get like this faintest little like hint whiff of it,
but then that thing sort of emerges into almost a movement.
This is how it happens.
Yeah, and I think that's happening with. I think it's because this is how everything works. I guess is like, I mean, even politics probably work like this. It's like the pendulum swings too far in one direction, and then we realize the answer was somewhere. It's not at either pole. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's not that. Like, so for in this hustle example, it's like, it's not that we should never work hard, but it's definitely not that we should always work hard either.
So I have a few questions about this, because I'm worried that my pendulum has swung too far into the, like, free-flowing, doesn't have to be crazy at work, just, like, take it as it goes. And I think that I need to get back to, like, the hustling and organization more. And yeah, I mean, what if you find something that you're just so passionate about and you do hustle towards it?
Then do it. But their point is like this mindless, like after hours, constantly being stressed about work, which is unproductive.
Like wearing it as a badge almost.
That
as part
it's
of your
everything
identity.
we've talked about, like probably on the podcast or stuff I've like tweeted about or written on Facebook. Like it's all of that stuff condensed. It's like it shouldn't be a badge that you fucking are tired and worked so hard, and that like, you know, they're basically saying like you should have time to like play with your kids. You should have time to like do whatever you want. Like work should be, you know, they're basically saying, and I want to plant a seed here for 40-hour work week for another thought, but they're just saying, you know, don't take that shit home with you. Like, you know, work hard and be scheduled about it, but then stop working too. And I think I agree with you. I think I'm in the same boat. Is I think in the last year, though I'm going to contradict myself, though I feel like I'm not working hard, if I look back, it's like, well, a lot has happened too. Like I have made a lot happen, but every day I feel like I'm not doing shit. And I think I need a little more structure, a little more like I'm going to work from these hours and these hours. They're not saying to never work. They're just saying like, you know, now I'm going to tie it into that point. They're just saying 8 hours, you know, Monday through Friday, 40-hour work week or whatever. What's crazy to me is that like that's a lot. Like I'm not working anywhere near that, and just to think like how I could even carve out 8 hours for actual work, it's like I get that a lot of people in maybe corporate America are like, you know, they claim to be putting in these 80-hour, 100-hour weeks and stuff like that. But for me to even think about really finding 8 hours of quality work Monday through Friday, like that's a lot of time. At least the way I see it. I'm curious if you agree, but to me it's like, whoa, like where am I going to find that kind of time?
Yeah, I mean, I also have questions like, what is 8 hours? Like, if you go pee, does that count? Like, what if you have to like call your mom for 12 minutes? Like, I don't know what 8 hours even really means.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I'm at right now, I think it's tough to have 8 hours of like focused attention per day.
Maybe there's breaks, but let's just say, you know, let's just say 9 to 5 you're working, right? Let's just say that. And if you call your mom for 12 minutes, you eat lunch, you go pee a few times, like that's fine. But let's just say like 9 to 5, or whether it's 10 to 8 or whatever, but like 8 hour chunk.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of seems like doable. I think that it's just about like setting up the habits and getting into the patterns, and then once those patterns are established, it would probably be easier. Like, I mean, I remember before I started running 3 miles seemed sort of impossible, and now I just like start and I just know that I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I think we definitely have it in our capabilities to do something
For sure.
like that.
But it's like with all this other stuff we want to do, because we're trying to craft our enjoyable life, not just our productive life, then how do you find 8 hours? Then it's hard. Like for
what's the
example,
balance?
I want to wake up when I want. I want to meditate. I want to read. I want to maybe listen to a podcast, go for a walk, like, you know, make a $30 smoothie. I want to do all these things. And then the way I feel is like, by the time I do those things and kind of like settle into the day, it's like, now it's like noon. And now it's like, you know, and then it's like, by the time it's 4 or 5, I'm like, well, what are we going to eat for dinner? Do we have to go to the store? Are we going to go out? Like all of that. And then we eat dinner. Then it's like, I don't know, somehow my day ends up being like 1 to 3. It's just like, where is everything else right now?
Dude, that's so funny that you say that, because it's almost exactly me on a lot of days too.
Yeah.
You wake up whenever you want, you do the whole morning routine, and then, yeah, by the time it's over, there's like this anxiety of like, oh, well, I did all these things that are good for me, but now I'm stressed out anyway just because it's like so late in the day.
Yeah. What's the balance of the morning routine? Like, a few weeks ago, I felt like I had it better. I was waking up a bit earlier. I was knocking out these things like stacked. I would just immediately go outside to the beach with my journal, with my like Kindle or book, and I would just go out. Immediately I'm getting sun, I'm meditating, then I'm reading and journaling and coming back in. And that way it would like condense it. But then like the last week or so, I stayed up later a few nights. I started waking up a lot later. And then all of a sudden it was just like, now it's just like a disaster, you know?
Yeah. And then also like, I want to be able to like put stuff aside and like see friends sometimes.
Right. And that see, that's the exact thing for me too, is it's like the reason we're doing this is the ultimate conflict of like, structure versus freedom. Is the whole reason I got into this was I want to be able to just wake up and be like, fuck it, I want to do this today. So I never want to deprive myself of that. It's like, oh, it's Wednesday, I have to work at this time. Like the whole reason we're doing this is to not have to do that, basically. A big reason, at least. Maybe not the reason, but a big reason. So,
but it's like, well, it's the whole question. When you figure out a way to not have to do that, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Like with all freedom comes an empty space to fill.
Yeah. But now I think I've like filled too much, where now I think I have to take like what you're saying and go back a level and be like, okay, now I need a little more structure. I need to, maybe I can't work 8 hours a day, but shit, honestly, if I could just block off 4 hours a day of actual work right now, that would be more than I'm doing. Like, yeah. But like, how do you even fathom people that are claiming to work 80, 100-hour weeks? Like, are they lying? I mean, there's not that much time. Are they just...
How many hours a week is that for like, let's say 6
days? How many hours a week are there?
Oh, yeah. So like 6 days, 100 hours is like 10, that's like, what's 15 hours, what's 15 times 6?
90.
Yeah, you're right. So it'd be like 16 and a half hours a day for 6 days is 100 hours.
But I mean, that's your entire waking life. That's your
I think a lot of people kind of just like wake up and start working, and then when they're done working, they like eat dinner, see their family for a bit, and go to bed.
I guess, but are they really doing that? I mean, I guess
I don't know.
Some jobs are really demanding, but like, I think people, but I'm
sure some people do that,
but for sure,
some are lying.
No doubt though, there is exaggeration. It's the badge of honor thing. There are definitely people that are working 50 hours that are saying it's 80 hours.
Oh, right. And even it's like, okay, like there's exaggeration in a lot of things, but I think what you're saying is like, well, exaggeration is based on the assumption, like...
It's based on it being a good thing.
It's like, I'm benching 80, you're only benching 40.
Right, exactly. It's like, so that has the assumption that it's a good thing. Because you don't... Well, I'm fascinated by the topic of people bragging about negative things, and I think that's one of them. But it's like, part of us thinks it's a good thing, I guess, which is why they want to brag about this seemingly negative thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's just about getting to a place where I just like, it's hard with like everyone's doing their own thing. I think that it's just, like, the reason people brag about it is because they're comparing themselves to other people and they want to like see where they rank in the whole hierarchy and social status. And they're trying to like somehow attain status through it. This is one lens to look at it through. And I think that it's about, at least for me, and I'm definitely not there yet, but just trying to not compare myself to others and just trying to really think, well, what would be best for me, and trying to pursue that. And I think right now that does mean working more, and not only working more, but just like working for myself and having this freedom. It's great, but it's also there's also another side to the coin where like I have to be my own parent, and sometimes I'm like, Sam, just eat the cookie, just do it. I actually stopped eating cookies because I was saying that to myself too much with actual cookies. But yeah, just like I have gotten into this place of self-discipline with other things, like looking at how like I read every day, I meditate every day, I run a few times a week, I'm working out. So like there are these things that I'm proud of, and I think sometimes it's also about just like reminding yourself what you are already doing.
Right.
I remember once last December I was on the phone with my friend Andre, and I was like, I really need to read more, like I know that I want to like boost it up. And he was like, sometimes it's okay to just really smile and be happy about where you are.
For sure.
I think that that's something that I need to remind myself of, because like we were talking too when we were walking along the beach here. You were like Sam, you could be creating more, like writing more, and maybe making videos, and like I get stressed out about that because like I feel like I do have the ability to create things, and it's stressful to feel like I'm not living up to my potential in that way.
That sums up my feeling is I don't mean to put my stress onto anyone, you included, is like I think that's maybe something I suffer from a lot, is that I kind of punish myself for the fear of not living up to everything I could be doing. Right? Like, because for me, it's like, yeah, I want to start this new brand that I've publicly talked about kind of as motivation to myself to do it. I want to start the interview podcast, the other podcast. I still want to do that. And during wanting to start these new things, I'm already dropping the ball on things I'm doing now. Like, I'm not devoting enough time to like even my current YouTube. Like I haven't made a video. Like I struggle to even, or my own other businesses or all these other projects that I'm involved in. It's just like I am already dropping the ball, but I want to do all these things. But I envision a way that it could all just kind of be more organized inflow with people helping, with, you know, just with it being where I can have like, you know, leverage points and just be effective in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think there's a few things. The first that comes to mind is that the struggle with all of this, with all self-improvement, self-growth, just changing how we do things, is that anything you will gain, you're also going to lose something. Like, you always lose something. Like,
right.
Like when there's a certain joy to just waking up and checking my phone right away. And when I try to like meditate and read before checking my phone, which I don't always do, but most days I do, you know, I sacrifice that.
Great point. Is it's funny how like we demonize things so much, but sometimes these things have a lot of benefits too. Like right now, a big example of this is demonizing social media. But like, and maybe the real demon is what are you consuming, not how much. Because for me, like, I think it's like, and I'm sure you too, it's like the stuff you're consuming is not a waste of your time usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, but like, you know, it's easy to just say like, well, social media or being on your phone is bad, but it's like, well, what if you're like reading a very thoughtful article? What if you're like, you know, following a very curated set of people that you want to learn from? It's completely different than just like, you know, fucking this archetype of social media just being this like superficial thing.
I think that it goes back to the mushroom conversation a bit, which is, are we using it as a medicine or a drug? And in my opinion, we all actually have a clear picture of what we're doing at any given moment. Like, we kind of know. Like, recently I've been using social media as a little bit of a drug. It's like, oh, open Twitter. Any new crypto tweets? Check the prices.
But you kind of enjoy that. So it
is enjoyable.
So
but
is it?
Everyone enjoys drugs.
Good or bad? Like, should you be like, you know what? I'm not going to check Twitter for the next month. Like,
no.
Yeah.
Because I learned stuff from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's about just finding a balance that's healthy, and also about having the courage to just make these changes and to change our behavior.
Yeah. One thing, the point on like scheduling and making yourself have work ethic and like being your own parent, I think that really is the hardest part of entrepreneurship. At least, and maybe that's just me putting my personal feelings onto other people, but it's hard to like not be told what to do, and it's hard to not know what you're supposed to do. Like, even if you want to work hard, I think the reason you get caught up a lot and end up not doing stuff is because you don't know exactly what you should be doing. If you knew exactly what you should be doing, then it's like, okay, I know that this is going to do this and this is going to do this. But I think most of it is kind of like, well, I'm not really sure I'm going exactly the right direction.
Do you think this is more of a question, but do you think it's about like being more like calmly aware about what we don't know? It's like, oh, I don't know what I should be doing. Well, then this is the problem that I should be thinking about right now. What should I be doing? And then like taking this and like asking follow-up questions in your mind, and then eventually you like get yourself to a point where you like are more high level and you can see the pieces and see how they fit together.
That sounds beneficial for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you can really do that in a way that is clear and have that focus to figure it out, then, but I think that the danger in that, and I think this is something I do, and it goes back to what we were just saying about Twitter, is that like, I like to just be constantly learning, but that's not the most effective thing for me to be doing, maybe. Like, I would love to just listen to fucking podcasts and business books and stuff, like basically, and not just business, but like everything improvement, right? Yeah. I love that stuff. Like but obviously if I'm only, we actually talked about this, the consuming versus producing.
Yeah.
If I was only consuming and not producing, that's not the best use of my time.
But it's almost like, I don't really know, but one opinion is that if you really consume and you're really present and paying attention, you're really learning from what you're consuming, then that is what's going to give you that uncontrollable push to start producing.
Yes, and I think that's where I am. But I think you can go too far too. Like, I don't think it'd be of use to anybody if I was consuming more and producing less. But I also don't think it'd be useful if I was consuming nothing and just producing, because then you're just throwing your thoughts out. Like, you're just it didn't have any time to cook. It didn't have any time to like grow before you put it out there if you're just putting it out there and never feeding it.
I mean, producing is just reorganizing what you've consumed in a way.
Right. So you have to consume and you have to produce, but you can't. It has to be both. It can't be all of one and none of the other.
Yeah, and I think producing is also a lot more scary than consuming.
For sure. It's way more scary.
It's more vulnerable.
Because now you're putting something out there that people are going to judge. And you said something, not on the podcast, that was really good about this, was like, because the last like couple podcasts we had, Jessica, my girlfriend, edit these, or like help us listen back to it to know where the cuts would be. And something Sam said that I thought was so good was like, you know, because I said like, well, it's kind of fun for us to go back and listen to the podcast, but like that takes us 2 hours, right? For us to go back and listen to this thing, it takes as long as it is, right? And that's 2 hours out of each of us. And something that Sam said was like, something that you said was just that it's better for the podcast to use that time listening to another podcast rather than us just listening back to ourselves. Like, go consume something else, and that's going to feed this podcast more than us just going back and listening to it. So it's better to kind of like, you know, feed yourself the consumption and then produce, rather than like 2x the consumption and then just produce. It's that balance of consumption and production.
I think it is. I mean, I was just thinking in my mind, like, I sort of, in a sense, know what I need to do. It's like, I need to start. I was talking with my friend, Seth, yesterday, and we were saying, like, I think I said, maybe it's not as much about thinking about what I need to do next as much as it is about developing the habits and the daily work habits. Because, like, if I just, like, sit down from, like, these hours every day and say I'm gonna work towards something, then over time the work will get done if I'm actually there doing it
Yes.
consistently. And then I can sort of, like, channel these habits. It's like these habits are almost like an arrow, and you can almost point that arrow anywhere you want and there's going to be progress made, as opposed to just thinking about what am I going to do next and then thinking about, well, how am I going to work on it.
Right. 100%. And I'm like right there with you. Like that's exactly what I need is it. I know so much now. That sounds weird, but like, I just mean I've consumed so much
Right.
that like, I feel like I have a wealth of information in a lot of areas that apply to a lot of businesses. But it's like, I just need that organization and actual sit down and execute time.
Ah, dude, I can relate to that so much. It's like this anxiety because, like, you see yourself accomplishing these goals and it's like, fuck, I can do anything I want. But then it's like, but I'm still not quite there yet and I still need to improve in this direction. And, like, I can kind of see glimpses of my potential, but then it's also scary to think about, like, there's, like, still progress to be made, and it's like, it's still, I think it's just a matter of, like, having faith, of realizing it's a marathon and not a sprint, and just, like, figuring out a way to get sustainable energy. Like, I remember when I was in college, like, thinking, oh, maybe I could work on a business when I graduate, like, full time. Like, that was the most intoxicating, exciting thought imaginable. And once I had that thought and that, like, vision, I was like, oh, I can do this. I'm gonna do this.
Same.
And I think that we're just in this, like, we're in this moment of, like, what is gonna be that next thing?
Yeah.
And you know what else I think is scary is that the business after college, right? This is, like, doable, but it's also like like, the next goal we set would conceivably be much bigger than that because we have the experience of where we are. And for me, there's also that, like, it's also scary to pursue something bigger too.
It's scary, and
Yeah.
it's yet another balance is, should we be going for our absolute maximum potential versus being happy with where we are? So it's like yet another thing that's like pulling me in opposite directions.
It's almost like we need to sort of do both.
Yeah, and that's I think why we're always in this flux and in this struggle, is because, like, you know, like, because yeah, it's like, oh my god, like, maybe I could be a billionaire, maybe I could
Right.
start 85 different businesses at once, like maybe I could hire all these people or like whatever. But then on the other hand, it's like, but maybe I could go read a book and maybe I could go hang out with Jessica.
And it's like, okay,
yeah.
sorry, but it's like, okay, maybe you could be a billionaire, and then what would you do? And then what would you do? Oh,
Right.
maybe you could get $10 billion, and then what would you do? And then fucking what? Like,
So that's the thing, is that I have this stress about wanting to reach my potential, but is that the right thing? Is that the right thing? Or why do you want to reach your potential? Is that ego? Is that so you can feel like
right,
you
I
reached
think,
your potential?
and I gotta say, like, it is partly ego,
It
and
is.
I think that something that I've been realizing, even, like, listening to more of these Aubrey Marcus podcasts, is that just like there's that thing I miss by not checking my phone in the morning, there's maybe just gonna have to be that thing I miss by, like, not going for ego-driven goals, because, like, at this
Right.
point, I've heard it from enough people, and I just, like, it doesn't always make perfect sense. Like, there's always that ego inside of you that's like, come on, just do it, like, make it big, make it the biggest. But I just know that I need to think differently. And, like, the only person that can, like, if I'm succeeding so that like I'll be seen a certain way or this or that. It's just this like empty thing. Like if
That's
you're
the
climbing
ego.
a mountain, like you want to like be at the top of the mountain with a lot of people, not just like by yourself looking
Or-
down, you know.
Be on a mountain that you'd want to be on even if no one was looking. Even if no one knew you climbed that mountain.
Right. And
Then it's
and
for
that's-
yourself.
And that's the challenge. And I think that it's also like just about choosing like, well, like should we go on to like, should we hike 5 little mini mountains during the day, or should I try and climb a big one? Like I don't fuck. I don't
I
know.
love this though, like, because something I think about, I've heard this quote a few people, is like, you know, what drives you now is when you're on your deathbed and you're looking back and you realize the potential you could have reached and you didn't, and that regret. But like, what if you made it to 95 out of 100? Like that's an A. Like that's pretty awesome. Like,
And like,
and maybe that extra 5 wasn't worth it for the added stress.
and conceivably, like, this is another way of like a thought experiment, I guess. On our deathbed, if we really like were there, then the best thing to do is to be like, look, like I am where I'm at now. I'm just gonna try and like finish this shit out well.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do? Like, you fucking idiot! Like, you stupid 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old.
And in a sense, we actually are on our, like, we are metaphorically on our deathbed a little bit, because everything that's happened before now is a type of dead. Like, we can't change where we are now. We fucking can't.
Yeah, and this moment is the furthest into the future you've ever lived at any
Right,
moment.
it's like-
this is the pinnacle of where you ever made it in your life. Is this moment of listening to this podcast is the furthest you've gone.
Yeah, and like all we can do is just focus on the right now. And I think that it just takes this sort of like not being afraid to lose either. Like when I've really been happiest is when I was taking risks, and when there was a chance of loss, and when I was just going after something that was like so exciting. So I think in a sense it's like not doing something because I have to or because I feel like I have to fulfill my potential, but it's just like finding something that I really want to do and going for it. And
Right. And isn't it funny how we have this innate drive for like, you know what, I just want to be perfect all the time, easy all the time, not stressed. Like I just want to hit that point where someday I have it all figured out. It's funny how we have that
we're never
drive.
going to be there.
We have this drive that just like, you know, if this, and this just sets, then I'll just be like settled, and then things will be the way
Yeah.
that I want.
You know what happened? Like, I remember at the end of last year, I was like running low on money, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta make more money. Like, if only I could like make more money, like then I would be able to like be in LA and this. And then like I made like $100,000 in a month, and it was insane. It was
Casual.
more.
Casual 100,000 in a month.
Yeah, it was like I was probably making like $2,000-$3,000 profit a month, and then I went from that and like almost running out of money to I made $100,000 in a month, and it was this like shock to my system almost. And now looking back at it, like that did cause me to like take my foot off the pedal in some ways. And I think number one, I was just like so exhausted from like going so hard for a while, but also it like got rid of that drive, and I like have got to figure out like where's the next drive.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I mean, like the first year that I made around $250,000 for the year was 2016. And like shit, I mean this ties into what we were just talking about, is like how do I figure out how to get my foot back on the gas and like organize my time, because I think once you kind of hit that, it's like it's very easy to be like you know, then you just let things coast a bit more, which, you know, that's also a good thing. Like this is what we were talking about, on that shroom trip. Like that was one of the main sort of things I got out of it. It was like, you know what, like it's good to relax and like, you know, like you're good. Like it doesn't have to be maximum. It doesn't have to be potential all the time.
Yeah, I think my friend Seth, we were talking recently, and he said something like, "Oh, much of your happiness is just going to be based on the relationships that you have," and that just rings so true to me. Like, it's not about what I do; it's just about the relationships that I have. And, you know, to an extent, what I do can cause different types of relationships. Like, in a sense, it's like there's also a relationship with, like a one-to-many relationship we have with Tim Ferriss. And that must be so cool for him to, like, hear these stories all the time. Like, you affected my life. But, you know, I really do think that there's also this, like, ego, this insecurity thing of people just, like, trying to like get more and more and more and more, and
attention or money or both.
I guess both. And I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's good and bad. I mean, I think that money is an amazing tool, and I think that having audience can be used so impactfully.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's what I'm trying to do. And how you said relationships is like you have a relationship with the audience too, and I didn't know what that would feel like, but it's I think it does fulfill like some element of our like tribal sort of need to like have this group that's much bigger than like having a few friends. Right. But like, you know, like when this is fresh in my mind because just yesterday I did a live Q&A like on YouTube, and the feeling after that of having 100 people in there live, like asking questions, and sure, I'm the only one talking, I'm just reading their stuff, like it's not truly like a personal connection, but the feeling after that is almost the same feeling of like after you hung out with a huge group of friends and then you left and you just, it's like it like refills something in you of human connection, it in much the same way, like probably not equivalent way, like there's some sort of, you know, not exactly linear connection there, but it still, you know, maybe it's not as efficient, but it still taps into the same thing. Yeah, it's crazy, but I definitely sort of feel like my social connection bucket gets filled up from doing things like that, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like, if you were building up an audience, think about sort of the impact that you'd have, right? Like, I mean, like a personal, which I think you're moving towards that.
Yeah.
Like, just think how amazing that would be, and that's why I'm still pushing for it. Not just for me though, but like, because I mean, I guess there can be ego in that, but I don't know. It's just, I think it can be used for so much more good than most people with audience realize.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, building an audience, you sort of attract people that are interested in the similar things. So yeah, I think there's tremendous power in that, and it does seem to be something that's positive. Yeah, and whatever you do, like anything that you want to do, like you meet people and you connect with people. There's connections to be made in any journey. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, a lot comes out of it. I think it's also on my mind because, like, I don't know if you saw, like, I did this video about Alex Becker.
I didn't see the video, but I saw that you did.
Do you know who he is? Have you watched him? Or?
No.
Oh, well, he's like one of the biggest, I guess, entrepreneur channels, I would say. Mm-hmm. And he just made this like long rant on Facebook, just saying like basically, fuck social media. This is a waste of my time.
I saw that. I saw you shared that. I saw.
Yeah.
That.
So it was that post, and then I made a video about that basically. So yeah, and it's like this guy that has this massive audience. He provides a lot of value. He makes jokes. He's funny. He's like, you know, doing this whole thing. But he was basically just saying like, yeah, fuck, this was a waste of my time. And I was like, maybe, you know, his argument is basically like, look, I can make more money if I put that time into my business.
Yeah.
And that's probably true for him.
Yeah.
But what about other ROI that's not just financial? What about impacting people? What about connection? What about, legacy, if you will? What about, like, filling up your human connection bucket? Right? Like, I just feel like you're missing the point if you're only thinking about building an audience for, like, one specific ROI. Like, you don't, like, what? Like, he hasn't met one person that, like, changed his life through this?
I guess, but, like, clearly, like, it wasn't working for him in some way.
Yeah, I guess. I think something got to him.
What do you think it was that wasn't working?
I don't know. I think it was working. Just something bothered him on a personal level about it, I think.
What do you think bothered him?
If I knew, I would say it. I just don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like something frustrated him, and he was just like, "Fuck it," kind of like angrily, like.
Yeah, it seemed like he was angry.
Like he was pissed. Like he was just frustrated. He's just like, "Fuck this."
I do think I see that sometimes from people that have bigger audience. They're like, "Fuck it," because honestly, I think there's probably something really lonely about having such a audience and like, because the more rare of a circumstance you find yourself in, the less people that will be able to relate to you. And I think there's probably a lot of people that get lonely, especially nothing on Alex Becker. I don't even really know who he is, but especially people that are building up audiences out of like insecurity and ego. I think that once you get it, it's this like you realize it was just all a mirage, and the insecurity is probably still there.
Yeah, I think that can be true, and I feel you on like the weirder we go down these paths, the less people you can relate to. Like, like somebody in sort of my space on YouTube and Amazon is Tom Wong. Shout out to Tom Wong. But like it's funny because like we can kind of text each other and it gets into this level of thinking about this whole thing because it's like, well, how many people do I have to relate to that like have an Amazon business, but now they also have some level of audience, and it's like, so we were kind of talking about this issue of like, well, the audience, and should I just do my business, and like, are we doing it? Like, it's true though, is it's like the pool of people now that could relate to say me or to me and him truly is like so small, because now it's like, first off, people feel like they're lonely to being an Amazon seller. How many other people are Amazon sellers? But then they find these groups. But how many people are Amazon sellers and have audiences? And how many people are Amazon sellers and have audiences and actually think about like, like doing it in an ethical way? Like now you're talking like 3 people, right? It's like, it gets real weird when you like go down these paths and you have less people that can relate to you on what it feels like to be in your situation.
Like look at Tim Ferriss. He probably has nobody that is on exactly the same kind of thing. He's like so unique in what he does.
Yeah, like and I guess that's why people, they start hanging out with like, let's say high level or celebrities hang out with celebrities or date celebrities. It's because like they are the only ones that can kind of relate to their set of problems. Like, like who's Tim Ferriss's? Well, like Tim Ferriss and Kevin Rose. Like they are like a match made in heaven. Like they are like, that makes so much sense that they're best friends, Like, because they can relate on like so much of this stuff, like the same timeline, like financially, the things they think about. They both have audiences. Like, so they, I'm sure, can relate on things very deeply that, not many people could relate to Tim Ferriss on to that extent.
Yeah, and I think that what keeps him going, and it's remarkable how much he's been going and going and going and going, is just that he's doing something that clearly means so much to him, and he like has this innate drive, and he knows that he's helping people, and he just can't stop himself. I remember I heard once Tim Ferriss on like, a lot of people will ask him, should I write a book? And he said, if people ask me that, I say, if you're asking me this question, then you shouldn't. Because if you were going to write a book, you'd already be writing it. Like, you wouldn't be able to help yourself. He's like, when I wrote 4 Hour Work Week, I can't imagine anything more painful than not writing it.
Right. Like it just has to come out of you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I also think that there's something to be said for just like having experiences and fucking like you know what else? It's just like fucking like living life and like having experiences and like doing things that scare you and that interest you and that like are scary. And it's not all with business. Like there's certainly business risks to be taken, but there's many risks to be taken that aren't business, that are just like pushing ourselves out of our boxes and like growing and like being courageous. I think that that's really what it comes down to. It's just like being courageous, because that building block will just spread like a network through your entire life. And it's hard to just do it and do it. I think that like when I made all that money in 30 days, I was like, fucking, oh my God, like breathe. All right. I can like, I was like sleeping on my friend's floor, like on a mattress, but like basically in my friend's corner of his studio apartment for a month. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate it. You saved me. But like,
by the way, Jason, I just made $100,000.
But yeah, I mean, it was like crazy to get that. But then I think that also like I was forced to be like really courageous when I was like running low on money, and then I got that. And don't get me wrong, like I'm so grateful. But I think that also like that shook things up in a way that I couldn't have expected either. Mm-hmm. Just to go from like, it's like even like you hear about lottery winners.
Yeah. Like
it's interesting to go from like a zero to like so much. It's like, what do you do with that?
What do you think about like I don't even know what you would classify this as, but like the thought that people don't do what they need to do because they're afraid of getting it. Like they're afraid of success. I know like you have
spot on, I think.
And I don't know what I think about it, but then it's weird because like, for example, me personally, I know all of these things, but it's like, why am I not putting the pieces together to the extent that I could be? Like, am I? But I feel like I feel like that's not the case, but I wonder if I'm just missing something about myself. But to me, it's like I want those things to work out. I just can't make myself do it. But like, I want those results. So like,
but there's
am I afraid of it?
Do you think that there's a part of you that realizes that there's some sacrifices to be made?
Sacrifices in having reached the goal or along the way?
What do you want?
Let's use the goal of like, I don't know, like making $1 million in a year.
Okay.
Are you saying I might be afraid of the result of having made the $1 million, or afraid of putting in the process? Because I think I struggle with the process.
Yeah, I mean,
but I get sorry to interrupt, but I get the argument of people that would say like, well, maybe you're afraid of success, maybe you're afraid of the goal or something.
Well, what? Okay, yeah, that's a goal? You have to make $1 million in a year?
I mean, I made that up, but okay. I mean, it could. I mean, I don't have like an exact number like that.
Well, what's a goal that you have?
I mean, nothing like written down, to be honest. Like, I just want to do so many things, and I think in general, maybe that's the problem, is I don't have them clearly defined. But like, I know that like, if I put some pieces together, I could probably 5x my income or something like that.
And what do you think it is that's caused you to not have it clearly defined?
Like, it's this unorganized, scattered, too many balls in the air, not knowing exactly how to organize this, what to focus on, needing to still do some things just to make money versus like, say, putting people in positions. It's like, that's a very strong gap to bridge in entrepreneurship, I think, is like, getting from that like area where maybe you're making a couple $100,000 a year or whatever, getting from that to like being the leader of like, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, and like you're owning this system. It's like but like you can't do that if you're only making 100 or 200 a year or whatever. Like you're not about to go out and hire 6 people. I mean, then you're making $0. But
it seems like maybe, do you think there's like more anxieties now that have popped up because of the successes that you've had?
Yes and no. I mean, I think overall, like, I'm still of the belief that making money solves more problems than it brings up.
Right.
I really think so.
But that's not. Do you think that there's some anxieties that have popped up because of all of the success that you've had? Or maybe I'm asking the wrong question.
I just haven't reached what I would consider to be enough success. I think I have more anxiety towards successes I have not reached and not really feeling like I am a success. More than feeling like I have succeeded and that those are causing anxieties. I just feel like I haven't really succeeded. I feel like there's there's still a next level of like, now I really don't have to worry about this, or now, I have this organized and I have people and I have this business and I have investments and I'm diversified and like I have all these like things. It's like that level is when like that is a much more made it successful
you
level.
can kind of smell that.
I can smell that, and I think that's what I've been at. Is it's like, well, how do I get from like where I'm at now to like 5 to 10xing my income and having 5 to 10 people helping me, and then I see people that get to that level. Then it becomes effortless. Like then it becomes I can afford to pay somebody $100,000 a year who is fucking great at what they do to like manage this shit. But like for example, like when I was putting the most focus into my earliest brands, the ones that I started like 3 years ago now, like I thought about that with like because I was like, okay, well the cash flow is this and it's looking really good, but like I have to buy all this inventory. Like I would love to hire people, but like the cash flow of hiring is like it puts you out on a limb, because like at least for me, it's like, like let's say you start a new business. And let's assume you don't have a bunch of money or whatever. Like let's say you start a new business and it starts making $4,000 a month. Like for you to go out and hire somebody that costs $4,000 a month, when that's like the only thing, like now you're leveraged right back to zero. What if it goes down? Now you're losing money every month. Like it's a weird gap. And I feel like that's like the next thing on my radar is like, well, I know if I put a few pieces in place, I know my income can be dramatically higher, and I know that can buy me the leverage of people.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just trying to dig in a little bit. It's that must be something there must be some reason that these pieces aren't in place. Maybe. Yeah. And it's like, what do you think it is? How do you think, like, or maybe like, how can we get these pieces in place?
Yeah.
Or like, it seems that there's a block.
Right.
For you.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to like figure out what that is.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think that everything you're saying, by the way, I see in myself too, yeah. But I'm just like, I'm trying to like get into it.
I think part of it is just on a financial level of like consistency of income. Like for example, if $100,000 a month, if I started consistently making $100,000 a month,
which I'm not doing, by the way. Yeah.
I'm not at that level either. Yeah. But if that's kind of what I'm talking, if I get to that level, now it's like much more manageable to be like, you know what, like
the savings are going up every month.
Like look, like right, I'm putting this much into investments that are going to be giving me passive cash flow. If I'm making this much, I'm very comfortable to hire a team that costs me $20,000 to $30,000 a month, because I know that it's $100K every single. But like like I said, with like say you're making $4,000, you're not going to go hire somebody that costs $4,000. And I think that's why like the when your income can go up by like a step function, all of a sudden you're like, okay, now I can put these pieces in place. Whereas like I'm that's what I mean. It's like I don't think I've reached that level of success where I have that extreme level of consistency where it's like no worries about money. Like sure, I've had success, I've made money, but like I'm not at a point where I don't have to worry about money at all. Like I know
Right.
there's such a beyond level. Like
It could still go to zero theoretically.
sure, and it's like, look, let's use 2016 as an example because that was the first year that I made a good amount of money. It was like $245,000 on my tax return in 2016 when I was 23. Yeah, and like that felt crazy, but like it also didn't because a fuck ton goes to taxes. It's expensive to live here. I had so much money tied up in inventory. Like it's not like for me to, and maybe I'm just setting my goals so high, but for me to feel like truly financially free, like it's just like $250,000 is not gonna cut it. Like it's,
And this is revenue, right? Not profit.
that's profit.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was yeah, but still I had. At that time, I probably had 100,000 in inventory. I probably paid 100,000 in taxes, and then our living expenses or whatever. Like, it's not
Right.
that much money when you really figure it out. And it's like, and I don't mean to say it's not
Yeah.
that much money. I've done well. I'm happy with my successes, but what I'm saying is that
No, based on your expenses every month, given the tax, it's like given everything that you spend money on, there's not probably that much to actually like put in savings every month.
that's what I'm saying is that like
Yeah.
I want to be like investing.
It's a nice feeling to be like having that number in your bank account go up every month consistently,
Right.
versus going up or down and not really knowing
Like I want to be investing that much money per year, not making. Like I mean, I just and I want to. Or here's my real definition of financial freedom of where I want to get is like I want to be making that much money from passive investments. Like that's where I want to get eventually. To me, that will be where it's like true financial freedom is like, let's say I want to make $1,000 a day
Yeah.
for living expenses. Well, no, honestly, that probably wouldn't even be enough for where I really want to get in terms of that. But let's use that as an example. Let's say you want to make $100,000 or $1,000 a day from passive investments. Like for a really basic calculation, let's say that across all your investments you can make 10% a year. Like if you're investing in real estate and all this other stuff, and let's say you make 10% a year. So that means to make $1,000 a day, you have to have $3.65 million invested. Right. So I do not have $3.65 million invested.
Yeah.
So like, or even not even close to that. So it's like, and I think this is a mistake I made too, because like when I first started making a bunch of money, if I'd been smarter about the way I did things for taxes, if I'd been smarter about a lot of these things, like I would have been able to accumulate a lot of cash to put into investments. These are things that I'm putting in, that I'm learning about now that I didn't know what I was doing. It's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, fuck, I'm making, it's December and $100K or whatever, $100,000 basically. And I mean, that's the type of stuff I Q4, but then it's like, what do I do?
Yeah, I think that there's probably just like, I'll speak for me, there's just like some anxiety between like, now you can sort of like see that picture clear of like what that additional money would do for you, and you can like kind of see it and you just like want to like be there, you just like want to get it, you just like want it, but I guess in my mind, it's like it's just about like accepting where we are. It's like there's no like one step switch that's gonna make that happen. Mm-hmm. And then once you like truly realize that there's not this like switch that's gonna automatically make it that, you become less stressed about like not being there yet.
Right.
Because you can't just get there. The only way to get there is to like start moving.
Yeah.
And we are moving. But I remember like when I really like somehow when I stopped worrying about like the end result and I just like focus on like consistent progress, that's when my anxiety goes away. And almost it's like
Yeah.
And it's important because like right now this is like the big picture clouds view, but then when you actually just get into it and you start doing it, it's like it's almost impossible to worry and do something at the same time.
Yeah. And I'll also note is like I like to let myself just get fully vulnerable in these conversations, and I think in what I'm really like I try to bring out my weaknesses, and I think in reality, like I agree, is the way I think it's done and what I try to do is not exponential overnight. It is brick by brick. It is like little steps every day. It's not like, you know, you don't go from 0 to 100K in a month typically. Like you do something you take a little step every day, you lay one brick every day, and like that's the way I see most people getting successful. I think that's the path that I've been on that has led to my level of success and the path that I'm continuing to be on. That said, I just like to I think the way that I will grow is by bringing up the points that I still feel like I'm hitting walls at.
It is the way that you're going to grow, and I appreciate it. I'm sure people appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's where we learn from being vulnerable. And that's another skill that you're cultivating right now is just being vulnerable. Because it's not always comfortable, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I like... I'm a fan of it though, like the vulnerabilities. I mean, I think that's an emerging thing for sure. It's just like people, because when you hear somebody and they've like let that guard down, it's just something is magnetic about that.
It is, and it's emerging, but it's actually always been here. It's just like people challenge it ever so slowly, and then once people are on a new level, then that gives everyone else permission to go to that level of vulnerability, and then once everyone else is on that level, then there's going to be someone else that goes to a new level, and it's just a process, and it keeps going. So I think that if you cultivate this, then it's a big skill, and it's almost like the more you can do it, the more like you can always keep going towards it more, I think. But,
yeah.
Cool. How do you feel?
Good. Are we winding down?
Yeah, I'd be down. Anything, I don't know, anything else, questions you have for me, anything on your mind?
I think we're getting, I'm sensing it in the air that we're starting to wrap up. But, I mean, no, nothing else immediately comes to mind, I guess. I think we're hitting that point.
I think we should play Twitter.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay. Let's do a few.
Sure. I will be honest though, like that one was so good that it kind of like makes me. It's like fuck, like, but we'll try. But like I loved that one.
Yeah. I guess I'll. It's about just like trying to say the next word and not trying to like be funny with it. But then once you like say the next word, then sometimes it gets really funny.
Right. We're not trying to be funny. I guess, yeah.
We are not trying to be funny.
Okay. Blankets.
Sometimes.
Go.
Stale.
After.
You.
Leave.
Them.
In.
The.
Sun.
For.
Too.
Long.
Hashtag.
Moldy blankets.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was good. Alright. I'll start. Suburban.
Homes.
Often.
Look.
Trashy.
As.
Shit.
In.
Person.
As.
I.
Look.
Directly.
At.
A.
Trailer.
Park.
What? Hashtag.
What you see is not always what you get.
That one I gotta listen back. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
One
Maybe
more.
maybe we'll end it off on a.
Okay. Clouds.
Sometimes.
Look.
White.
And.
Gray.
But.
Once.
I.
Looked.
At.
A.
Cloud.
And.
This.
Cloud.
Looked.
Purple.
And.
It.
also
made
noise.
hashtag
fluffy miracles.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for
Group.
listening.
If you want to join the group, if you want to have thoughts with us on The Rock, facebook.com/groups/thoughts from Space Rock. In general, give us your thoughts, leave comments. It really feels good to hear from you guys, know people are listening and engaging, and we want to know what you thought, so reach out to us. I'm Matt Loberstein everywhere, at MattLoberstein. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give my Instagram. It's Sam Feldman, but it's Feldman ending in 3 N's compared to the normal 1 N.
I love how, like, trying to explain that it's like with 3 N's or with 2 extra N's. It's 3 N's total. It's 2 extra
3
N's.
N's. It's like it's like spell it and then add 2 N's, and then after you do that, then
Then go back and make sure there's
my
3.
name. But if you already put 2 N's, then you added 2 N's, then that would be 4. So then subtract an N. It's also there's
Dude, it's funny because, like, every time I can tell, like, when you go to spell it, you're like, oh shit, like, how do I explain this? Like,
yeah. Good.
it's maybe
I'll
it's time
have
to figure out how you can get at Sam Feldman.
I'm gonna have to do that. Yeah.
That's probably tricky. But
I have it on Venmo. If
Oh,
anyone
yeah?
wants to.
if anyone wants to Venmo you. All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks for listening. That was fun.
See you guys.